Venerable, and the Upasanga, the lay community here this evening. I feel very happy and honored to have this opportunity to meet with you all this evening. To give you just a little bit of background, I was born in England, and yet I never really felt at home in England. And I also always had a very strong pull towards India in particular. And as soon as I could, I finished my studies, high school studies, at the age of 17. And I worked on a building site in a warehouse to make enough money. And in November of 1975, I set off from England overland to India. And I spent altogether almost a year here in India as a teenager. So I have this great love of India, and sometimes I've expressed it like this, that India was my first love, but I got married to Thailand. Yeah, India is my first love, but I got married to Thailand. Okay. My path towards Buddhism really began through my inquiry into why is the world like this? Why is my life like this? It seemed to me very important to look into this question. Why is the world so full of injustice and suffering and war and unkindness? Why is it like, does it have to be this way? And if it could be better than this, then what is the responsibility of each human being to try to make the world a better place? And what can one person do? This was the first question in my mind as a teenager. So the other question that I wrestled with a lot as a teenager is, what is the right way to live? What is the best way to live? So this is connected with the first question, of course. But I considered that with material objects, let's say cars, for instance, we can make some comparison between a Mercedes and a Skoda, for instance, and we can look at these two different kinds of cars in terms of their comfort, their style, their safety, their fuel consumption. We have so many different criteria to compare between different material objects or merchandise of various kinds. But my question was, is it possible to look at human life like that and say, this is a better life than that one? What would be the criteria on which you would make that choice or that decision? So my research was conducted through reading works of psychology and philosophy, and so many different books I read. And then fortunately, I came across a book on Buddhism, and it answered all of my questions. And to summarize most simply, the teaching or the understanding that I received from reading this book was that the underlying cause of suffering, whether it's in the individual or in the family or in the community or the society, or lies in the human mind. And as long as there is greed, hatred, delusion in the human mind, any external reforms or revolutions will only ever be superficial at best. That the effort to reduce and eliminate greed, hatred, and delusion, to cultivate wisdom, compassion, this is the best way to live your life as a human being, but also enables you to contribute to making the world a better place. So for me, studying and practicing the Dhamma and sharing my understanding with others at appropriate times seem to me this is the best possible way of living as a human being, and is playing one small part in trying to make the world a better place. It was only after I'd returned to England that I discovered that it was the monastic order, the Buddhist monastic order, was designed by the Lord Buddha exactly for people like me. And I thought, yes, this is what I want to do with my life. And so in late 1978, I flew to Thailand to offer myself as student of my teacher, the great master Ajahn Chah. So when I arrived in Thailand, I could not speak the language at all, and my teacher did not speak English. When I arrived, there were monks from many different countries, and many of the local people would be very intrigued by this, and they couldn't understand how could he teach these people from, and most of us were quite educated people with university degrees. How could this monk who spent all his life in the forest, who only had 4 years of schooling, how could he teach these people in such a way that they were obviously very inspired and committed to Buddhist life? On one occasion, a farmer asked my teacher, Lumpur, we call our teachers in Thailand, Lumpur, do you speak English? And he said, no. He said, do you speak German? He said, no. Do you speak Japanese? He said, no. He said, all these languages. And he said, well then, how can you teach all these people from other countries? And then Ajahn Chah, my teacher, he asked the farmer, in your farm, do you have cows? He said, yes. You have chickens? He said, yeah. Do you have dogs? He said, yes. Do you speak cow language? Do you speak chicken language? Do you speak dog language? Then how do they all manage? He said, the Westerners, they're nothing. They're just like water buffalo. You just pull them this way and you pull them that way, and they pick it up themselves. So these days, if I give public talks, I get very glowing introductions and praise. But my teacher said, as monks, your ideal is earthworm. Monks, you should try to be earthworm. many of you probably know that without earthworms there could be no agriculture. Earthworms, you don't see them, but they're digesting the soil, breaking the soil up so that whatever you plant will grow. And he said, just be worms. You just do your work and create goodness and purity in the world. This is the goal of the Buddhist monk. So I would just like to now just to continue on the theme of what it is that has attracted so many people from around the world, particularly we say educated people from around the world to come to Buddhism in increasing numbers over the past years. For my own observation of the religions of the world is that, or the philosophies and religions, is that often they give very inspiring ideals. They tell us how we should be, what a good person is. But then we have a problem, don't we? We have the problem that, yes, that's so inspiring, but I'm not like that. I know that's how a good person should be, but I'm not a good person. So how can I change myself from how I am now to how my religion tells me I should be? And for me, this is the black hole, the blind spot of most religious systems, that the practical technology for changing human minds is almost completely absent. And this is what I and many other people have found and been so impressed with, that the Buddhist teachings is not only giving us a goal, but giving us very clear, precise, detailed instructions of how we work from where we are now towards that goal. So the technology that I'm referring to is, of course, the Eightfold Path. And the Eightfold Path can be summarized or can be telescoped into three kinds of training. So the training of our conduct, the way that we act, the way that we speak, with sila. Training of the heart, of the mind, as we call samadhi, and the training of panya. This threefold training is, to put it in another words, is a threefold education. So I would say that the Eightfold Path, or the threefold education, is the most sophisticated, complete, and effective education system that the world has ever known. So this unique feature of Buddhism can be examined quite clearly in terms of the Buddhist attitude to faith. Now, in most religions, faith is so important that the word is used interchangeably with religion. So we will say this faith or this religion, they mean the same thing. But in Buddhism, faith is seen to be one tool that is used in this training or education. And it is a tool which has pros and cons. It has strong points and weak points, and must have wisdom governing it. So the value of faith is that it clarifies, it energizes. The other side of faith is that it can very easily lead to superstition or fanaticism. So as Buddhists, we're saying faith is very important. It leads to effort. It energizes. We want that energy. We want that focus. But at the same time, we have to be very careful to protect our faith and not allow it to decline and to degenerate and lead to superstition or fanaticism. So this is how the role of a virtue, a key virtue, like faith, in an education system, religion, like Buddhism, fulfills a very different role from faith in most other major religions. So in the Chunky Sutta, in the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha gave us a very beautiful word, very beautiful idea. It's called Satchanuraka. Satcha means truth, Anuraka means to care for. He said, we have to care for the truth. And the way that we care for the truth, we take care of the truth, we protect the truth, is that we do not assert that something must be true because we believe in it 100%. And this is the problem in so many religious groups, that people say, this is true. And you say, how do you know it's true? It's true because the moment I heard this, I just believed, I just knew. So it leads this circular reasoning. It is true because I believe it. I believe it because it's true. And just goes round and round in circles. And so this is why there's so much conflict between religious groups. But the Buddha says, but is it not possible to believe 100% in something that is not true? My personal experience is yes. When I was a small boy, I believed 100% in Santa Claus. And then I found out afterwards that Santa Claus does not exist. So the point is that faith and belief, unshakable belief in something, does not prove that what you believe therefore must be true. This is a revolution in religious thinking, and here we see the brilliance, the absolute wisdom of the Buddha to point something out that no one else. For a religious leader to teach this way, it's absolutely wonderful and amazing. So in Buddhism, we have certain beliefs, but we take on these beliefs, let us say, as working hypotheses, because the beliefs that we adopt are beliefs about our human existence, our capacity to abandon the unwholesome, develop the wholesome, purify the mind. So these are not beliefs about unprovable events in the past. The essence of Buddhist faith is I can abandon greed, hatred, and delusion. I can cultivate wisdom, compassion, purity. So if we have faith in the Buddhist sense, we must seek to verify whether or not the things we believe are true. And we can verify them because they are statements about us, about our body, our mind, not about supernatural entities. Buddhism is human-based. It's about this life. this mind, this body, what is this? So, of course, there are certain teachings which we can prove, we can verify quite simply in our daily life. Let us take the teaching on precepts, and the Buddha says that we have a problem as human beings, don't we? We all have within us, as long as our mind's not yet been trained, we have greed and hatred and delusion, so many negative emotions. So how can we live together as human beings in peace and harmony when we have these defilements within our hearts? Is it possible? And the Buddha says that the tool that we can make use of in this case is our ability not to follow our basic animal instincts. So we have these instincts, the same, hardly different from other animals, but we also have the capacity not to follow them. To give an example, you might see something very attractive, something you really like, come into this hall, you're all alone, there's nobody else, and you know if you were to take that thing, nobody would know. But would you take it? I think most people say, well, no. They say, well, why not? You want it, why not take it? Well, it's not mine. That the owner would feel unhappy. I feel sorry for them. For example, so the point being that we can, so many times in our life where we have this animal, we want something or we don't want something, this instinct, and we don't necessarily follow it for some reason or other. So that is a capacity that we have, an observable capacity. This is not a belief. We can all see this. So the Buddha says, if we can cultivate that and make use of it in our life, we can live together in harmony, even if we still have a bad temper or we still have desires of various kinds. So when somebody takes the 5 precepts, as you did earlier on, you are making a promise to the people around you. And you're saying, I love you, but nevertheless, sometimes I get very angry with you. Sometimes maybe I even want to hit you or swear at you. This is just, this is me right now. I'm like this. But I promise you, no matter how angry I get, I will not ever harm you, physically or verbally. This is my promise to you. I have desires to get this and get that, but I promise I will not ever take anything that doesn't belong to me. You're married, you're in a stable relationship, then maybe sometimes you see somebody other than your spouse, you find them attractive. It's just normal, natural part of human life. But you say to your spouse, you say to your partner, even though sometimes I might feel sexual feelings for somebody else, I will never act upon them. I will never say a single word because of them. So with these, and with lying, you say sometimes, saying, I have the desire to lie to protect my reputation. I feel if I tell the truth, maybe you won't like me, you won't love me, you won't respect me, but I won't tell you a lie under any circumstance. Sometimes maybe I don't tell you everything, but I won't tell you a lie. So these 4 promises that you make, These are the greatest gifts you can give to your family and the people around you, because you are giving the gift of safety. You know, if you're someone in your family says, I keep these precepts, you relax. And there is trust in the community. We create trust through precepts. And the Buddha calls the keeping the precepts Mahadana. It's the greatest dana because before anything else, we need to feel safe. If we can't feel safe in our families and in our communities, then no matter how many meditation retreats you go on and all the knowledge you have and about jhana and all this stuff, it won't really work, because you haven't dealt with the ABC, the basics. You need to feel safe. You need to be able to be trusted and to trust the people around you. And this is provided by precepts. The fifth precept is the one by which we can make sure we can keep those first four promises. If you drink alcohol or you take drugs, then your sense of responsibility and your commitment to your promises cannot be upheld. So for those five, you make those five promises. So even as the inner work to let go of the defilement, to develop the wholesome quality, still a long way to go. On this external level, we can use the precepts as a tool to create healthy, nurturing, trusting, loving families and communities. So observe that this is not a moral system in which there is reward and punishment. There's no God or there's no Buddha is going to reward you when you keep precept, and no one is going to punish you when you don't. This is a training. This is an education of your conduct. This is a way of creating healthy and nurturing communities. It's part of the overall education system that the Buddha gave to us. But also, the keeping of the precepts is in itself a meditation practice. That is to say, it is the fundamental mindfulness practice in everyday life. You cannot be aware of your breath or of a mantra throughout your daily life, especially when you have to speak with other people, you're having meetings, or you're having a busy life. You can't keep your mind on one thing, but you need to be aware. So what are the foundations for awareness in daily life? Well, the most basic of them are the precepts. So let's say in a meeting of any kind, you have this fundamental mindfulness, I will not tell a lie. Even so, there you're mindful. You're not mindful of your in-breath and your out-breath, but you're mindful that you're going to be truthful. You're not going to lie. And when the instinct to lie comes up, then you see it and you understand yourself. Why do you lie? Or you want someone to like you, or you're afraid of losing something or losing face or whatever it might be. So you can be purifying your mind through the recollection of this fourth precept. Another example, let's say a mosquito is going to bite you. So the habitual instinct is something painful and you just slap it. So it's a completely automatic, mindless reaction, and karma is created. But if you're taking that first precept of non-violence very seriously, then as the instinct to spot the mosquito arises in the mind, then the mindfulness of the first precept pops up and you wake up. And when mindfulness arises, notice what comes with it. Your values come with it. Your aspirations come with it, because you wake up. You wake up from this automatic reaction to stimuli. And when you stop, is this right? Is it wrong? Is it appropriate? Inappropriate? So these considerations, moral, ethical considerations, arise with mindfulness of precepts as its condition. So morality in Buddhism is not a matter of, say, like a reward and punishment system to be a good person, but it is part of this overall education system. It's a training. It helps us to be more aware and awake in our daily life. So there are so many things that we could talk about, and I could talk all night. So I maybe just make a couple more points. One is that our ability to be mindful in daily life is conditioned by the formal meditation practice, and vice versa. The experience in the formal meditation practices of sitting and walking are very much affected by the quality of mindfulness in daily life. So they affect each other. It is very helpful to begin the day first thing in the morning with a meditation period. Many people, if they have to choose morning, evening, they will meditate before they go to bed. But it's very hard to really put much effort into meditation. It's more, inevitably becomes more of a relaxation technique. But if you, and then in the morning and you wake up, then last night's meditation was like a different chapter. We're on a new chapter now of your life, a new day. So it's very hard to trace the positive effects of meditation on your daily life if you only meditate at nighttime. Of course, it's good to meditate at nighttime, but very important first thing in the morning, because if you put your effort into meditation in the morning and you can observe that you feel more patient, more kind, more aware, so many positive effects that gradually occur. And when you see those, then that gives you the inspiration to keep practicing, because continuity is the key. When we first start to practice meditation, it's common to have some very powerful experiences, and then people feel that's what meditation should be, and they're trying just to get back, try to relive those peak experiences. But the actual practice of transformation for most people is a lot more subtle than that. And one great teacher has said that the practice of Dhamma, it's not like going out in the rain and you were on the road and almost immediately you realize that you're wet. He said it's much more like going out in the fog. And maybe it's only after you walked in the fog for quite some time and you come back home and you notice that your cloth is all your clothes are all damp and wet. So it tends to be a very gradual thing. So if you're always looking for some special experience in meditation as a proof that now I'm getting somewhere, then it can be very frustrating. But if you observe this gradual improvement in the quality of your life and the quality of your mind, this is evidence of a more sustainable development. So to end this evening, I would just like to tell you a story from Thailand. So the story is about a old lady, and her daughter-in-law live in a little village by the side of a mountain. And the mountain is forested, and when the rain comes, a lot of mushrooms, and the first mushrooms of the year, very delicious. And the two ladies, the rain is falling at night, and so two ladies are going to go off and to gather mushrooms. But of course, they're not the only ones. All the ladies in the village have the same idea. And the young woman said she knows a place near the summit of the mountain where there are these really big mushrooms. It's really so big and so delicious. And she's determined that they're going to get these mushrooms. But as they climb up the mountain, the old lady stopping all the time, she sees some small mushroom and she puts into her bag. And the daughter-in-law getting very frustrated. Says, Mother, come on. Don't worry about the small ones. We're going to get up to get those really big ones. But the mother stops and eventually the young woman, she's just so impatient. She said, okay, Mom, I'm leaving you. I'm not going to get there in time. And she climbs up the mountain and the rain comes down a bit, and she gets up to the top of the mountain. Of course, there are other young women with the same idea, and there's no mushrooms left. And so she walks home and climbs down the mountain, and she's so tired and cold. And then as she's approaching the house, there's this lovely smell coming from the house. She says, Mother, what's that you're cooking? And the mother says, Daughter, come in. I've made little mushroom soup. So this story is, you just want the big one and the best one and the super one, and you don't want the little one. But if you just accumulate the little goodnesses, the little virtues, little bit, maybe you have very beautiful, very delicious soup. You want just the special experience, and then maybe you're frustrated like the young woman. So I wish you all to have very delicious little mushroom soup. And if you can have the big mushroom, that's good too.
Considering the, I think, time constraints, only one questions will be allowed, and then we will conclude the session. Venerable Bhante, he want to know, before this Buddha's birth, does past Buddhas were there, whether their birth was there? Is it true? Or?
Well, I can't remember personally before my time, but let me just speak about this more broadly. So there is a famous teaching in which the Buddha picked up some leaves in his hand, and he said, "Which are the leaves in my hand or the leaves in the forest?" And the Buddha, and of course the Savaka, they said, well, the leaves in the forest. I think they probably relieved quite an easy question today. They said, yeah, there's more leaves in the forest than the leaves in the Buddha's hand. So the Buddha says all the things that the Buddha knows are like so many, like all the leaves in the forest. But the things that the Buddha thinks are useful for you to know or helpful are like the leaves in his hand. He only teaches the truths that are beneficial. Now, so what are those leaves? And this is essentially the sutta and the vinaya. These are the leaves that the Buddha taught. Now, in the sutta, there are so many references to past lives, into rebirth. It's not possible to argue for any analysis of this sutta. It's not possible to argue, I think, that rebirth is not a key teaching of the Buddha, and it is also one of the leaves. It means that of all the things he knew, he felt that we should know something about, we should listen and approach this idea of rebirth. Now, so this includes a question of past Buddhas, this a broader answer. So what is our attitude to something like this? Well, we care for the truth. We say we don't know. Were there past Buddhas? We don't know. Will there be future Buddhas? We don't know. We have past lives? We don't know. But we can have some faith or some trust. What I mean by trust is that there are so many of the teaching of the Buddha which we can prove in our daily life. And for me, after 40 years, I have yet to find a single teaching of the Buddha that I've proved to be false. Every single teaching is yes. Oh, the Buddha, yes, the Buddha got it right again. Yes, yeah. Oh, yes, yeah. And this is how the faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha grows naturally, because you are proving again and again and again and again and again and again that the Buddha is teaching us the truth. So when we have the teaching or something we cannot imagine, we cannot imagine heaven realms and hell realms and all this stuff, then what is the right attitude? The right attitude is, I cannot imagine this. It's difficult for me to really hold this in my mind, but out of my trust in the wisdom and the compassion of the Buddha, I will hold it like this, hold it lightly, not hold on to it. I hold it because the Buddha is teaching this. Every single thing he's taught me that I can put to the test, he's always been right. So on this area of the teaching, which I cannot yet verify, I will trust the Buddha for the time being. So we say, I don't know. Is there rebirth? Is there past Buddha, future Buddha? I don't know. But the Buddha said it, and the Buddha is a very trustworthy person. So I hold it lightly out of my trust and love for the Buddha.
My question is, when we do practice virtue, when does it qualify as fulfillment of parmi? Suppose I'm doing dana, so do I need to make a mental resolution? Yes, this act of good deed should be counted in a perfection of parmi. Every time I do practice the virtue. So that clarity I wanted to know.
My question. Firstly, I thank you so much for your words of wisdom. Particularly the way you told us that shield can also be used for awareness. That was quite enlightening because I wasn't aware of that. So that is something which is very helpful to me. You shared your life experience that when you were in your teenage, you had a lot of questions. I myself, when I was in my teenage, had those same kind of questions. How could I? Why is there so much violence in the world or bad things happening? even today now we are going through a war, and such things disturb me. So you said you read a book about the Buddha, and that encouraged you to follow the path of the Buddha. Could you please share the name of the book or anything related to that book? I would want to know.
Yes, thank you. So the first question about Parami. So there's a lot of in fact, if we look at the historical background to this teaching on Parami, it's not a feature of the Sutta teaching. So the Buddha's discourses do not include instruction on development of Parami. Many scholars believe that the teaching of the 10 Parami in Theravada Buddhism is in fact a response to the teaching of the Parami in the Mahayana Buddhist tradition. It's primarily a commentarial teaching, but that's not to denigrate it. It's a wonderful teaching. But I think sometimes we can get too caught up, oh, it's this level of Parami and that level of Parami, and that's just the way the commentaries talk. That's their kind of style. For me, it's simply that a mind which will realize the Dhamma, to penetrate the three characteristics, is not one that's simply been taught a very powerful meditation technique. It needs to be a very mature mind. And the paramis are the 10 factors which bring the mind to a maturity in which it can realize the profound meaning of the Buddha's teachings. So I don't encourage too much technical categorization of the Parami. Just developing a generous heart is basically what it is, and being as generous as you can, and seeing how that just matures the mind. There's nothing can be so kind of miserable and constricted and sad as some get away. This is mine, this don't come close. So the Parami of Dana is intended to reduce and eliminate selfishness and stinginess, and that's an essential factor of the path leading to the emotional maturity that will allow you to make most use of the wisdom teachings. Okay, so as regards the second question, yes, the book I was growing up in the 1970s, and in the 1970s there were very few Theravada Buddhist books available in English translation. Almost apart from the Tripitaka itself, which had been translated by the Pali Text Society, there was almost nothing. It was mostly Chinese and Japanese Zen texts. And the book that I read was called The Way of Zen by a writer called Alan Watts, and a very articulate and very impressive, inspiring presentation of the basic teachings of the Buddha. But I think, with books, it's often, or Dhamma talks even, it's just, it's just like the right time for you. When you hear something, maybe you've already heard it 100 times before, but then it's just in that day and that way of talking, it clicks, and yeah, something clicks. Yeah. So one thing I remember about this book, and it's one of my favorite teachings, he points out how our understanding of reality is influenced by the conventions of our language. We don't really realize that. So the example he gave is, it is raining, okay? And then he asked the question, what do we mean by it? What is the it which is raining? You see? But there's just rain. But our language forces us to have like subject, verb, object. And so we assume from the convention of language that there is a permanent subject. And so the teaching of anatta is a way of allowing us to unravel this, to see clearly that there is not a fixed, impermanent subject of experience. But my first exposure to this teaching was this wonderful question, what does the it in "it is raining" actually refer to?
आपल्या सर्वांच्या वतीनं आपण वंदनीय भंते वेनरेबल अजान जयासोरा यांचे खूप खूप आभार मानूया. A big thank you to Bhante ki he is so busy since so many days, and in spite of that he spared, he enlighten us in a very proper technical manner regarding Buddhism. So thank you very much, sir. I also pay a big thanks to Venerable Bhante Bodhipalo Mahatheruji and Venerable Bhante Vishuddhananda Mahabodhiji and all the enlightened, learned Bhikkhu Sangha and all those who have really spared time for this. Big thank you to a wonderful and idol couple, Dr. Harshadip Kamble sir and Kamble madam, Anishji Goyal sir, all the reporters, those who have participated, Thai Sangha, Thai brothers and sisters, and all. सर्वांचं मनपूर्वक खूप खूप आभार, धन्यवाद.